I asked a while back on the Monkees Pad Show Facebook page if they had any questions for you while we were doing this interview, so I've got a few here to run by you.
Okay.
One is from Corey. Where did Bob Rafelson rate the Monkees in terms of his professional legacy?
Well, I think he rated it fairly high because his professional legacy as a filmmaker was fairly slim. You know, 5 Easy Pieces, I think, was the pinnacle of what he did as a filmmaker to him, and that's the thing that most people talked about. But he really cherished Head as a feature. He felt that was very important, and he also felt very connected to their legacy in later years. He felt it had some real resonance. So, I mean, there's a whole period of Bob's career prior to the Monkees where he was writing for television and working in television and doing other things like that. And that part has not really ever been fully detailed, I feel. But I feel like whenever I spoke to him about the Monkees, he always had, I mean, he was a cantankerous kind of guy. So you have to, once he pushed you back and put you in your place, if you survived that, you know, you'd get into it. And he had a lot of very warm feelings about the Monkees. When we were doing the DVD box set for Rhino, this is not the VHS box set. This is sort of in the year 2000, I guess, about 25 years ago. He showed up to do his DVD commentary, and it was an unusual circumstance. He said, well, first I need a cheeseburger and a bottle of wine before I do anything. So they got him that. And then I explained to him the way the commentary.
Good thing you didn't ask for pheasant under glass before he would start.
No. So those were easily obtainable, and that wasn't my job to get those. So that was totally fine. But Rhino had explicitly said to me, no one wants to hear you on these commentaries. It's just these people. So you're on the other end. They don't hear you or what you're talking about. You know. So I would have to. They would be in a booth recording it professionally. We did them all at the same studio in Hollywood, and I would be on the other end, and I would tell them, you know, I push the monitor thing on the mixing desk and say, okay, so I'm going to prompt you with some things. And what we're seeing on the screen, and they won't hear what I'm saying. So repeat whatever I say in the front of it, so it doesn't sound like disconnected. And so a couple of people, everybody went with that except for James Frawley and Bob Rafelson. So James Frawley said to me, hey, listen, Andrew, you know, I taught the Monkees improv, and I'm the king of improv. So I don't really need you to do your thing. I'm gonna come up with this and do it on my own. So I respected Jim Frawley, of course, and, you know, directed more Monkees episodes than anyone else, and had a big hand in how the show came together. So of course I stood aside, and we started rolling the whichever episode we were doing at the time, because we did a few episodes with him. And it was rolling, and there was just total silence. And after about 5 minutes, he goes, okay, I got nothing. Andrew, let's go back. We're going to do it your way. So that happened. And then for Bob said, no. You know so much about them. Bob and I had known each other a little bit at this point. He's like, I can't have you removed from me. I need you sitting directly next to me in the booth where I'm recording. I can't have you on the other side of it. I need to feel connected to you. I said, but they're going to hear me on the thing, and Rhino doesn't want that. No, no, no. This is how we have to do this. So so I sat down next to him in the booth when he's doing this, and he just started talking, and he didn't need any prompting from me. The only thing I did was I grabbed a styrofoam cup from his hand because it was making noise on the recording.
You poured it over his head.
Was freaking out. No, I didn't. I just pulled it away from him, which I can do. But he didn't. He channeled all he needed, all the energy he needed from me loving the Monkees, being next to him. He didn't need anything else. So, I felt Bert Schneider, who didn't do a commentary, but who I was friendly with too. I felt he told me in our last conversation, I'm a Monkees fan, Andrew. I think that those guys, as much as they tried to move on from the Monkees, just like the Monkees moved on from the Monkees, or they tried to, as individuals, they felt a real sense of accomplishment with what they achieved with the Monkees.
Randy asks, is there any plans to do a second day-by-day book that extends through the 70s into the 80s, etc.?
Yeah, there is, and I've done a great deal of writing on it, because initially when I revamped the day-by-day book, I had intended only to just update it and bring it through. But when I got all this new information, some of which came through you, Joe, I realized that the old book, I couldn't just update it and shoehorn this stuff in. It really required focus and a rewrite. So that's what I did for a year during the lockdown period. And I'm really happy I got it done, because I don't know any other time in my life where I would have been able to have that time to focus on just the story. And I loved that period of really getting to do it. And I'm in a similar situation now with the Kinks book, because as we're editing this book, my friend Doug, who wrote it and is an incredible researcher, actually taught me a lot about research in my early days developing what I did with the first Monkees book. There's so much new material that just keeps coming up that we've had to delay that book till next year. And we are doing a complete rewrite of the book. It's not just going to be the book that came out through Backbeat in the early 2000s. It's going to be a completely redone thing, broken into 3 volumes. So I hope someday to have enough time here on Earth to finish what I've already started. I already have a big chunk of that next book written, but it would require real time for me to completely focus on it. And this year I focused on your book, Joe, and I'm focusing on the Kinks, getting that, because I think they're both really important things. And I want to do that. I want to update my Bee Gees day-by-day book. I'd like to take my Everly Brothers research and put that into a book too. But these things take a lot of time. I used to think, if I just had like 2 or 3 months just to focus. Now everything takes much longer. I kind of work 7 days a week, and I want to do that. I still want to do a book on the Monkees TV episodes and new information I got on those. But it's sort of like finding that moment when I'm going to have the time to really do it, because I don't like to do anything half-assed. I just, everything I do, if I'm going to do it, has to be the best it can be. I want to give everything I have and put it into print.
Bob asking, have you found any other Monkees recordings?
A handful of things, yeah. Some people know about the track I found from Changes, but there's other stuff, but it's finding it and getting it released are 2 different things. And Rhino have some ongoing Monkees projects and some forecasting out into the future years. They have some ambitious plans of what they'd like to do, but when they do it and how they do it, there's no actual set plan right now. Things are in a good place. They just put out this headquarters LP. And it was funny, I read online, people really liked the series I've been doing with Kevin Gray, cutting from the original tapes. They've come out really good, I think, and they sound good. I feel they sound. Well, I bring in the original Cold Gems pressings next to them, and I'd always say, like, oh man, these will blow away the Cold Gems. But I feel that they're really some of the best sounding pressings of these records. However, I read online, somebody said, oh, well, they've already cut all the lacquers, or they've mastered all the versions of all the albums. They're all done with all those, and they're just waiting to put them out. I'm like, no. And the same thing, people are like, oh, well, the Pisces Aquarius box set, that was done years ago, and they've just been holding it back, and they'll put it out eventually. It's like, I've never worked on the Pisces Aquarius box set. I've talked to Rhino about it for a number of years now. They're for doing it, but it's not something that's scheduled. And it's also something that they've never actively engaged me in doing. So I have to always make a decision. I mean, for most people, it's like, well, surely you've sat and you've compiled it yourself and spent time doing it. It's like, I haven't, because I've been doing these books, or I've been doing Mickey's book, or I've been, producing concert tours or other things. Pisces Aquarius is my favorite album. I think that there's enough material to do a great set, but I have not done anything on it, and Rhino has not set a release. They have not said, here's a budget to go do it. I mean, that's the thing. When you get into working for people, it's sort of counterintuitive. People think, well, they're the Monkees company. Of course they're going to, they're not really the Monkees company. They're Rhino. They're Warner Music. They sell records by the Eagles and Led Zeppelin and Frank Sinatra and the Grateful Dead. Those are their real big sellers. The Monkees are on a much lower level to them, whereas they're up here for me priority-wise. So unless they're going to engage me to do something, it would just be a hobby, and unfortunately I have to pay my bills. So I have to pay for the lights and the water and all that stuff. So that's why I'm actively doing these other projects that do that and are important too. Rhino, when they call, I'm always excited to hear from them, but we don't always have a formal plan. They'll say, yeah, we really want to do this. And then there'll be no, like, well, here's X amount of dollars to go do this. So usually when it happens, they'll say, we really, really want to do it. Can you turn it in 1 month? And then I'm, like I did that with the Headquarters box set where I remixed the album. I got really sick at the end of doing it because I was working around the clock. And I just said to myself, I'm never doing that again. I'm never going to wear down my own health just to finish something on an arbitrary deadline that someone who doesn't care that much about it sets. I just, as much as I love the Monkees and the Monkees fans, I have to be more sensible in my old age. So that's an answer to the Pisces Aquarius question. I want to do it. It will probably get done. I don't know when.
When you were going through Mickey's archives to put his book together, did you come across any rare or unusual recordings that the fans would like to hear?
Oh yeah, no, there's tons, and he had a recording studio at his house, as we detail him in his book, and also there's some great photos I'd never seen that are in your book, Smoke-Filled Dreams, of the recording setup at the actual tape machine and the board and his drums and everything. So that's the first time I saw those. There's a lot, but it's really up to Mickey. Mickey goes up and down as far as what he wants to do at any moment. I think he's got some other projects that he wants to put forward. I mean, if the question also was like, are we going to do a volume 2 or a volume 3? I mean, there's enough material in Mickey's archive to do many, many projects, but it's Mickey's personal stuff. And that's a thing that a lot of people don't understand completely. And I have this with other artists too. Even we all collect recordings and bootlegs and stuff that's on YouTube and stuff, photos that are on the internet, all this stuff. But all those things belong to somebody legally and personally. And just because we found it doesn't mean it's ours, and it's ours to do anything we want with on a commercial level. So like this book of Mickey's took 3 or 4 years to really gestate and come together. And all of these Monkees projects take a long time. People have said to me, well, you look through Michael Nesmith's archives. When is all that coming out? Well, when his family decides that they want to do something, you know, I have to be respectful. None of that stuff belongs to me. It belongs to the family, and all that stuff belongs to Mickey. And Mickey is very sensitive. He doesn't necessarily always feel like that stuff is the best stuff or what he wants to do or what he wants to put across. So, you know, I deal with this with the Kinks too. I mean, there's all this great unreleased material, and once Ray Davies, I couldn't understand why he wouldn't want to put out this one song that had already been out on a compilation, and he would always reject it. And finally he said, he goes, Andrew, I wrote that song for my daughter, and I never wanted it out to begin with. It's very personal to me, and it's so sensitive to me. It almost hurts when I hear it, like, you don't understand. And at that point I was like, I do understand this. It never was explained to me that way, but I think people force out their, you know, as a fan, we force out these answers out of people for some really personal stuff, like, well, why haven't you done this, and why don't you do this, and you should do this, and you're stupid if you don't do that. It's like, you don't understand, that's actually someone's personal stuff. You know, you can't just like, hey, I want this, give me that. You know, all this stuff takes a long time. It takes sensitivity, and it takes and we're getting stuff done. It's just, you know, it's not at the rate that all of us would love, but it's coming along. Every day I'm working on stuff. So we'll see. I hope that Mickey lets more out of his archive in the future, but it's up to him. It's his stuff. And first I respect him and his property and his personal, you know, his personal feelings. And then comes the part of, can we make a deal to let more people hear it?
Yeah, but I would imagine if people like, you know, Harry Nilsson or John Lennon or Alice Cooper, some of these people are on these tapes, it's not exactly easy to, you know, to wrangle that for release.
No, I think that's the other big hang-up, which is that it seems such a large thing to deal with. It's not just, you know, it's Mickey, it'll be cool. You know, I think it's sort of like it would take so much doing and organizing that it seems daunting. And also, it's like, if you're somebody like Mickey who's evolving and keeps doing concert tours and doing, you know, new albums and other creative projects, you're not necessarily constantly thinking, I got to get all of my back stuff in order. You know, a lot of the stuff that was in his book, he's like, well, why would anybody care about that? And I would say, well, that's the only color photo of this thing from the pilot. Yeah, but you can't see anything. It doesn't mean anything. I go, well, it doesn't mean anything to you, but as one of your fans, it really means a lot. And okay, if you want to have it in there, fine. You know, but we did that over the course of 1,000 images. I mean, a lot of it was like, why does anybody want to see this?
Well, I've experienced that.
You know, a handful of things like, oh, this is great. Of course you want to have that in there. So, and then there were certain things he's like, you know, Andrew, I don't feel comfortable having this in here. Okay, we're taking it out because you have full approval. And with your book too, Joe, you know, there were things where you said, I don't feel this is the best image. And I would say, okay, that's where I have to be as a publisher in order to get done what I want to do. I have to respect people and their wishes and their feelings with their stuff. And so when you're just trolling around the internet, grabbing whatever you can and putting it up wherever you want and not giving credit to anybody, then you can do whatever. But it means that you're going to be like I was at Rhino, where there were the 10 photos of the Monkees. You know, you're only going to be set to that finite amount of stuff because you're not doing anything to actually get more. You're just taking from one source. So
yeah, it's been discovered and has been sitting there for decades already.
Right.
Someone wants to know, is there any bonus tracks or material from the Good Times project that might possibly make a deluxe edition?
Yeah, I think there's enough stuff. There's definitely interesting things. I mean, we did do that EP with the 4 songs that weren't on the record, the 2 that I produced and 2 that Adam left off the record. But I think since we did it, John Hughes and I have been talking about a deluxe of that album because it was such a great project. And there was, there was also like this Spanish version of Mia Magdalena that Nez did that never quite got finished. And so a few other bits and pieces. I'm sure if John and I talked about it, we would come up with something. When I remixed those couple tracks, the Gotta Give It Time and Love to Love for the Headquarters box set, that was even interesting to hear those tracks. I mean, I was at the sessions when Adam was working on them, but to get to actually break them apart and see what he had done with the vocals was really, really interesting. I'd love to do that. But we also shot more film. There's the sort of featurette, but my friend who shot that film shot quite a bit in the studio while they were working on the record. So there could be a lot of interesting stuff, but hopefully off into the future. I'd love to do it.
What happened in 1997 when all four Monkees got back together? They did a tour of England that was supposed to come over to the U.S., and the whole thing basically stopped in its tracks. What happened there?
Well, Michael Nesmith had been engaged in wanting to get back together with the Monkees and make another album, which was Just Us. They had a lot of difficulties making the record, getting along, and they also made a television special, which he was the director of. So following those two major projects, which they managed to hold together through, they went to England to start a concert tour, which they did all the dates. But when that was done, Michael bailed off of any further dates. They were supposed to come to the U.S. and he didn't do them. He decided he was done with working with the Monkees at that point. Now, there's a lot of material online and in print about the different guys. I mean, especially Davey was very vocal in his disappointment with Michael as a person, personally disappointed that, you know, they didn't continue on and do what they had agreed they were going to do. You know, I've heard varying different things about the specifics, but there wasn't one specific catalyst for why they didn't continue on. I think Michael and the Monkees, they always, you know, look at the Monkees' history. You know, they would get together for reunions and then they'd fall out and they get back together again a few years later and they fall out. Unfortunately, the clock ran out and, you know, there was no further reunion of the four of them. You know, Michael felt like he wanted to be free of it again, and he moved away from it for so many years. And then in 2011, when I brought the Monkees back together, Michael and I were in close contact, and he was excited about doing an appearance with them. The other guys were somewhat excited with that too. And then when I brought together all the plans for it, Davey and Peter came to me and said, "Why would we want him when we've been working all summer? Why would we want him to come?" And I said, "Well, you guys asked me to do that." Well, what nerve does he have to think he's going to be the big star now that we've been doing all this work? And that's sort of the story of the Monkees. They would say, "Oh yeah, we want to get back together." And then I'd say, "Okay, well, I've got everybody lined up and we can do this and that." Well, now that you've done all that, no. So I think probably that happened. And for most other people who aren't me, in that case, I think it was Ward Sylvester, who's unfortunately no longer with us. It's just, the Monkees are just too much for most other people to deal with. Who, you know, what's the payoff for them? They're as a business person, they would say, "Well, I don't really care to see these guys get back together or not. I mean, either we're going to make some money or we're not." A lot of the people who managed the Monkees over the years were more business oriented and more speculative. They didn't have a personal attachment to seeing the Monkees make new records, get on stage together, or, you know, whatever. Unless they were going to make so much money, they didn't want to do it. The Monkees, for their part, never really did any of these things specifically for the money. I think it was more for their emotional feelings, what they felt, and their feelings ebbed from, you know, being deeply, deeply proud of what they did together to, like, why is this thing the most important thing to everybody in my life? Why am I not known for just being me? I'm a whole person myself without the three other guys. I think all four of them had that. And it's been a tough thing for them. And it was a tough thing for them to deal with in their life. So that's a very surface answer, but gives you a lot of detail. And the details are out there on the 97 tour.
Well, wasn't there a contract? I mean, usually when you commit to a tour, there's a contract, and you can't just walk away from it like that.
No, I don't think there was any contract. I think they had taken in offers for dates, and those dates just were sold as the Monkees. It didn't specifically say must include Michael Nesmith. Michael Nesmith didn't personally sign each and every. I mean, when I did all my concert tours, the person who would sign the contracts for a lot of their concerts was me. I would get them to agree to the dates and the amount of money, and I would do a budget. But the 4 Monkees or 3 Monkees or 2 Monkees would never personally sign any of these contracts. They were usually signed by me.
So it was a handshake agreement between you and them. They could have bailed at any time.
And they threatened to. They threatened to bail on me all the time. Every concert tour, there's always something. I'm taking off. I'm not going to do it. And then we'd have to come to some new agreement and fix it. And that's what happened in 2011. That's would happen in the subsequent years too. I mean, there was always tensions and things to deal with. And at varying different times, I was left holding the bag with things. And so that's why, if you were a normal business person, you would never have gotten involved with these guys for a long period of time, because who would want to deal with that stress of, wow, I invested all this money. I've got all this money on my, for bills, for flights and hotels and meals and all this stuff. And now this guy, I thought we had an agreement. He's going to bail on me, but I kind of knew them a bit. I didn't think, oh, well, it'll all work out. It was interesting for me to do, and I wanted to do it, and I wanted to see them succeed. So sort of like a different mindset about it than some of the other people I think they were involved with. But I wouldn't say it was wise, and I wouldn't say it was the most, I never looked at it as like, well, I'm doing this for the profit. I was like, I'm doing this because I think the Monkees have this thing that they can do together. And it's not even like I want to be a part of it. It's like, I think that I could organize this. I see myself as an organizer, like with the books. This is your book, Joe. I'm the editor. I'm really the organizer of the logistics of getting it all together. And that's what I do. That, I don't like to see myself as being the primary focal point of the project. I think that these, like, Mickey's book is Mickey's book. Even my book is about the Monkees. It's not about me. So
I want to ask you, did you see the reunion tours when they were happening? Did you go to the 86 shows, 87 shows, 89 shows? What was your opinion of how they were, put up?
Yeah, I saw every Monkees concert tour from the 80s on. I was not alive when the original Monkees performed in the 1960s, sadly. So starting with 86, I first saw them at Pacific Amphitheater in Orange County, and that was my first ever Monkees show. And I remember at the time feeling, I'd been a subscriber to Monkey Business Fanzine and read some of the songs they were doing at the early warm-up show, and the Peak Skills, wherever there were, and the other songs. And I was always interested in, like, not just hearing, I don't want to just see the guys on stage and I'm not just hearing like the hits. I'd like to hear them do, like, I love these songs and this music. I'd like to hear them do some more interesting stuff on stage. And certainly in 87, that came to fruition with what they did, the set list, crazy set list of all kinds of amazing, it was an amazing show that they were doing. So I saw them over the years and do all that stuff, but in the back of my mind, I always felt like there's elements that the Monkees could do that are not being done. And that's what when I got involved, that's what I wanted gently prod them towards. And we ended up getting to do a lot of stuff. They did a lot of songs they'd never performed on stage before. They're a really creative, amazing unit, the four guys. And that's the thing that people don't get about them, is that given the resources to do more interesting things, they will do them. But also, they're based on what happened from 1968 on. The four of them have very different tastes than what the Monkees were best known for, and that was the thing that we had to deal with most in doing Good Times. Most of the Monkees, all three of them, didn't really understand why we would do a record that sounded like the older Monkees records, because the more contemporary, the idea would be do a more contemporary record to sell records. They didn't understand that by going back into what made them successful in the first place would connect with their audience. That's the part that they never really quite got. It seemed counterintuitive to them. It's like, well, why wouldn't we do something that was more like That Was Then, This Is Now, that's more contemporary sounding, and to be popular again? Why do you want to be so obscure by doing something that sounds like what we did in the 1960s? But they didn't realize it would be successful because that's what people wanted from them. So it was always a fight between what they wanted to do creatively and personally, what their tastes were and what their audience might like. And the problem with their tastes wasn't that they weren't good. It was that they had four different kinds of flavors, and they didn't always mix. And because they each wanted to do their own flavor, and they couldn't all do all four at the same time, not a lot got done. Or you get records that are really disjointed. And Justice is a weird record for me, I feel, because when I first heard it before it even came out, I was like, this doesn't sound like the Monkees.
So whose flavor was that? Was that because Mike was at the helm? I'm assuming that it certainly wasn't Davy's type of music, and certainly not Peter's.
I told Davey at the time, I said, I think you have the best songs on this record. I really felt It's Not Too Late was a great song, and I thought, You and I was really good too. But Michael thought to be more contemporary would be a really good idea, and do something more like the Screaming Trees. This is, I don't think, any new information. If you read Monkey Business Fanzine at the time, you can read all the quotes about what they were saying at the time. As they were quite, like, let's rent this drum kit to sound contemporary, like some Mickey's drums sound like a grunge record or whatever. So that's where they're coming from. Even when we talked about doing the first national band stuff, I've been talking to Michael about that for 4 or 5 years. First rehearsal we did with Christian in 2012 when he came into the band, and Michael had come back. He said, "Hey, man, my dad should do, my pop should do the first national band stuff." I go, "I agree. I want that more than anything else. I love those records. You talked him into this, you could talk him into that." I said, "I've been trying, and I would have these heartfelt talks with him. And I said, you're the godfather of country rock music, Nez. Ricky Nelson is dead. Graham Parsons is dead. You could show everybody this amazing music, these amazing songs. You could come back and do this thing, and it would be really well received. And you would be lauded as the genius that you are." And he's like, "Nope. I'm all about electronica now. Unless we're going to do something with electronica." He said, Andrew, I can't sell any concert tickets with country music. No one's going to come and see that." And I said, "You are really wrong." He goes, "Well, I get that you feel you're being sincere with what you're saying and telling me that I'm wrong, but I just know that no one cares about country music, and electronica is what I need to be doing." So I said, "Okay." And then many years went by, and then he's like, "Hey, I want to do this first national band thing." "Okay, I'll book the shows and I'll make it happen." And then it was very successful right away. But again, that goes back to my earlier point, which was I let people have their space to do what they want to do, even if I disagree with them. And I'll be there on the other end, hopefully, if I'm live long enough to get to do these other projects. It just, it takes time, and and patience. And that's, that's my lesson in life. That, and I'm personally attached to the music, not just the Monkees, but all of these people. And I feel that if I follow that path, give all I can to the music, that, I can get to share more of it. So that's what I'm doing,
What do you see as the future of the Monkees after Mickey retires? If the future legacy, how will it continue?
Well,
we'll keep it afloat.
The Monkees has to have new things happening with it, like having this book out, having reissues of the records that are done, not just a rehash of something that's already there, but really done at a different level. Because all the music's streaming. I mean, I'd love to see the TV show streaming. It's disappointing it's not streaming, especially since the films were all upgraded to high definition.
Why do you think that is? Well, wasn't Access, or somebody was showing it unauthorized, correct?
No, they weren't showing it unauthorized. Sony, the thing is, Sony owns part of the rights to the Monkees, and Rhino owns part of the rights. And initially, there was some talk about getting the show streaming, and the timing wasn't right. And the people who were approached about it said, "Sure, we'll take that for free. We don't want to give you any money for that. Who cares about the Monkees?" So the attitude from the streamers wasn't very positive. And so therefore Rhino kind of went retired. Now they have a bigger plan of what they want to do, and they do have a couple of big Monkees projects off into the future that are in development right now. So to me, that's the future of the Monkees, is getting over this hurdle of getting the Monkees streaming again, growing new fans, not just keeping it to ourselves, actually getting new people involved in the Monkees story, because the magic is there undoubtedly, and new people would like it if they saw it. So I mean, that's what I want to do. But in the absence of being able to affect that change, and that change is years in the making, I'm doing these books that I think are a really great spin-off on the history, and that's the Monkees' future. Turn on a friend to the Monkees, as they used to say they didn't say it with the Monkees in the 1960s, but they would say that, pass it on. I mean, I saw it on TV. I mean, my parents got me into the Beatles. They played me the Beatles records. I mean, give your friend a Monkees record, or tell them to listen to it on Spotify or YouTube or wherever they hear stuff. There'll be new fans if we keep letting people know about the Monkees and spreading it out.
With throughout the years of working with the Monkees, what were some of your most challenging episodes?
Well, I almost feel like I talked a lot about them in the touring. The challenge is just to keep my personal stress to a level where I can handle it and deal with it, because it's a very emotional thing it was a very emotional thing for the Monkees, and still an emotional thing for Mickey. I know. So the challenge is really time. How much time do we all have, and how much time will it take to get all the things that we want out there? The other music, the show streaming again, these book projects, which take years at a time. So that's the thing. It's just trying to. It's like I always think, like, am I making the best decision right now with my time? I have to really factor it out, because I'm not just working on these things, but I'm working on a few other box sets by other artists for a couple of different record companies. I'm working on the Kinks catalog too, and I get approached to do things, and I've been working on a few box sets now that have been ticking on to 4 or 5 years, that they've been in gestation for various reasons. Things don't always just. The sad thing is, like, you don't just get paid to do a project and then it just comes out and everything's good. A lot of these things, whatever's left for me to do is complicated. There's no easy things to do. So I end up having to jump through a lot of hoops. And that's kind of the biggest challenge with the Monkees is just getting through these things. And the stuff that's important to me is the stuff that people haven't heard yet or haven't seen yet visually. And then I have to understand it's also keeping the flame going with, stuff like having the show streaming, which I don't own. I don't own the show. I brokered the deal between Sony and Rhino to restore the show, which cost $250,000. Try getting two big companies to spend that much money on something that they make money on without spending any money on it. So, that takes that. I have to end up being a very annoying person, needling forward, pushing forward. And on the other end, to Monkees fans, they're like, well, why isn't this up and why hasn't this happened yet? It's because it takes a lot of determination and time. So
yeah, well, a lot of people have asked, if there's going to be a Pisces box, and I guess you answered that. It's really when Rhino decides they want to engage you to do so.
Right. They want to do it. I want to do it. They've said as much, but there's no set release, and they haven't said here's money to get the page transferred and do the other stuff, because all the stuff actually still costs money to do. It's not just like, oh, I'll just make a playlist and put it out, because I don't think anybody would be very happy. People can do that at home. That's just a bootleg. What I would want to do would be present something that had music you guys haven't heard, sound quality you haven't heard, and Pisces is difficult. There's a lot of missing elements with the multi-tracks, and and then photos you haven't seen in the booklet, liner notes that shed new light on what was done. Why else do it unless it's going to be something that's going to be really good?
Are there a few killer pieces that would be the crown on a set like that if it were to come out?
Well, there was one specific element to it that was a chunk of unreleased stuff that is owned physically by someone else, but Rhino controls the rights to it. They just don't have the music. And I was trying to broker a deal for that, and I got involved with even getting the president of the company to make some calls about it, and he told me that I need to let it go. So that's where that's at now. So, we could move on and do it without that, but I was trying to have it encompass even more than just what you might know of from reading my book. As far as mind blowers, the album is a mind blower. This would just be the detailing off to the sides, and it would be nice to have it because we have all the other records more or less, except for changes in the Just Us, Pool It, Good Times,
Would there be any plans to reissue the Missing Links tracks or add to them, or reissue the concert box set?
Oh, I don't know. I'm interested in all that stuff, but it's not anything we've ever discussed at Rhino. There's also a real turnover of people there. So there's not a continuity where it's the same people and they're like, oh, yeah, well, we got to do that now. There's been a little bit of that where we got this headquarters thing finally done after a number of years, the vinyl. But yeah, I'm interested in it. The sad thing is when I see these other regurgitations of that material and it's not really done with any upgraded quality or any bolstering of extra stuff, I get disappointed. But I also understand, Rhino, that's how Rhino makes money without actually having to do anything. They don't have to engage me. They don't have to engage their staff who they have to pay to do other stuff. They can just license it out to somebody else, and they can just do their thing. And Rhino makes money without actually having to. They just open the envelope for the check. They don't actually have to do anything or spend any more money. So it's that's to them sometimes seems more beneficial than having to like start some new project. You know?
And also, I've never asked, this is our 13th episode, I've never asked for any of you to like and subscribe to this channel, so I'll do that now for the first time. Like and subscribe this channel. All right, thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, everybody out there.
Thank you, fans. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again.
Okay.